Welcome to Independent Sources. I'm Garry Pierre-Pierre.
And I'm Abi Ishola. President Obama has remained relatively quiet on the issue of immigration, but that could soon change.
More than 30,000 Haitians are waiting for the Obama administration to decide if they'll be deported from the U.S. Haiti is still plagued by political uncertainty and trying to recover from storms that ripped through the country last year. The Haitians are hoping the current administration will grant them temporary protected status, something the Bush administration denied them.
On this edition of Independent Sources, we look at the impact the decision will have on the Haitians, their families, and on other immigrants in this country illegally. We talk about the discussion of domestic violence that's taking place in the ethnic media, and we visit a new radio station in Brooklyn targeting the Caribbean community.
But first, tens of thousands of Haitians are facing deportation. Their fate could be an early indication of where President Obama stands on the strict immigration enforcement policies of the Bush administration. Joining us is Ronald Aubourg of Radio Tropical, a station serving the Haitian community. Welcome, Ronald.
Thank you for having me, Garry.
Ronald, last week, we heard that that the number of Haitian refugees or Haitian immigrants having sent this letter of deportation varies from a couple of thousands to 30,000. What is the exact number, and how were these people targeted?
The number is over 30,000 immigrants, Haitian immigrants, that have had deportation orders against them. The number's correct, but the way that the community is understanding the numbers is wrong. First of all, the number is accumulative from deportation orders that have been issued maybe 20, 15, 10 years ago, last week. Among those 30,000 plus Haitian immigrants, you have 300 at present, as of last Thursday, that are being processed, in detention, that are being processed to be sent to Haiti. Among the 30,000, 1,100 are violent criminals, and they are being pursued. But the 30,000, as being understood by the Haitian community, is wrong. They're not being rounded up and sent back to Haiti. The 30,000 are a correct number, but they have those have deportation orders against them.
So what are people calling into your radio station? What are they saying about the situation?
Well, understandably, I mean, given the past relationship with the U.S. administration policies against Haitians, they are afraid. And most recently, for the past year, as many of you heard, that there have been some of them are called illegal rounded up in Florida and other states of Haitians. For example, somebody could be a church and ICE officers could walk in.
ICE mean immigration,
customs enforcement could come in and ask you for ID, and if you don't have an ID and you get picked up, and unfortunately if you don't have documentation, you get incarcerated and put in removal proceeding. So given that precedent, Haitians are afraid, and they call the radio station asking what, who, when, and how. So not wanting to alert the community about what's going on, we try to give them the best information as we can, just to calm their nerves.
So what are the larger concerns?
Larger concern is every undocumented Haitian are concerned that they will be picked up and sent back to Haiti, and they think that they are among the 30,000 that are being the number that are being broadcast out there.
Ronald, can Haiti, I mean, from what you're saying, this is not something that's going to happen massively at one fell swoop. 30,000 Haitians are not going to be deported tomorrow back to Haiti. But the sense that people have in the community is that this can happen. Haiti can't handle such an influx, could it?
Oh, no, not at all.
Why not?
We've had, I personally have been working on securing TPS, temporary protected status for Haitians, for the past 5 years. We met with officials in Washington under the Bush administration, which turned a blind ear to our concern, to our letters, and to the point where we had to travel to Haiti a couple of years ago in the spring to meet with the Powell administration. Unfortunately, we met with the Prime Minister, asking them, forcing their hands to write to the Bush administration and ask TPS for Haitians. But
Ronald, TPS, temporary protective status. Is that the best option? Why was that denied to Haitians?
The Bush administration said that it was under Secretary Churchoff, sent a letter, I think, in December.
Who was the Homeland Security
Secretary? Sent a letter to Powell saying that the criteria, Haiti does not meet the criteria for TPS. But however, we are looking at El Salvador, who's been granted TPS since 1999, and I'm sure things have improved, but yet El Salvador has been, their TPS has been extended until the summer of 2009.
So does this order stem from the Bush administration?
Yes, this order stemmed from the Bush administration, and we have the coalition, the Haitian Immigration Grassroots Coalition, organization that I belong to based in Miami, have spoken to the transition team, Obama transition team, but they have not yet made a solid commitment to reverse the policy to the point where FIAC, the Florida Immigrant Advocacy Center, headed by Cheryl Little, a longtime Haitian advocate, wrote to Napolitano, Secretary of Homeland Security, the new Secretary of Homeland Security, but it's still the same, that Haiti does not meet the criteria.
Well, Ronald, I mean, in that letter that Cheryl Little sent, she argued the case for that.
Yes,
Haiti has had four natural disasters and under all of that. So now, what is the Obama administration's policy? I mean, how are they seriously looking into this? What are they doing?
Well, to our knowledge, they are seriously looking into it. I think through our advocate, Wycliffe Jean, who participated in a protest down in Miami a week and a half ago pertaining to the same issue. So we hope that there will be ongoing conversation between the Obama administration, particularly Napolitano's office, regarding TPS for Haitians.
So is TPS the answer?
But I think it is. For now, it is. As you can remember, back in 1997, 1998, there was a similar, after the NACARA is the adjustment status for Central Americans, that was signed by Clinton. After that, we felt that we needed some relief as Haitians because the natural disasters had beset upon Haiti. So what had happened was that DED was issued to Haitians, deferred enforcement departure, which the next year, the Clinton administration passed the Haitian Refugee Immigration Fairness Act, which gave 55,000 Haitians the path to being documented, to green card. For now, we think that you have to understand, Abi, that there is an underpopulation living, for lack of a better term, under a rock. It's a human rights issue for us, because these people doesn't have access to health care. They don't have access to protection. If in fact that they are being abused, they can't go and avail themselves to the police because they think that the police is part of the whole law enforcement that's going to pick them up and send them back home. So I think having TPS will give Haitians the right to work.
So what's the next step?
Well, the next step is for us to really build up a coalition, as we did for the Haitian Refugee Immigration Fairness Act, not only Haitians, but also with other immigrant ethnic communities, and to continue to speak with the Obama administration about issuing this designation for Haitians.
Ronald, getting back to your show, again, I'd like to get a little bit more idea, a sense of, what are people saying? I mean, is there fear, is there uncertainty, and sort of the mood of the community?
Well, fear. That's the word. I think people fear because they know for a fact that if they are deported, there's nothing back home that they can rely on. There are no jobs. The economy is in shambles. You have, as you pointed out, what happened to Gonaive. Gonaive is
the third largest city in Haiti.
Yes, it is. Third largest city in
it's
Haiti.
Totally inundated.
You can't leave there. You can't leave there. You have the 15% of the economy is gone with the 4 hurricanes that has went through Haiti. So they are fearing because they will not have that cushion. Their families in Haiti will not have that cushion, whereas whatever earning they made, they will not have that anymore. So if in fact that one family or person, a single individual is returned, then you have 5, 6 families that have been affected by this.
Unfortunately, that's all the time we have. Ronald Aubourg, thanks for being with us.
My pleasure.
Now here's Zyphus Lebrun with some other news.
Thanks, Abby. Here's a look at some headlines from the ethnic media. From the Amsterdam News, Wilbert Tatum, retired publisher of the Amsterdam News, has died. Tatum, who also served as deputy borough president in Manhattan in the early 1970s, purchased the 100-year-old newspaper in 1971. From Desi Talk, Muzamil Hassan, founder and CEO of Bridges TV, has been arrested and charged for decapitating his wife, Asiya Hassan. Bridges TV is a small television network based in Buffalo. Its mission, dispelling negative stereotypes about Muslims. From the Filipino Reporter, Filipino World War II veterans say the United States should also pay the widows and families of their deceased comrades. $198 million from the economic stimulus package will go to Filipino World War II veterans, but only the 18,000 surviving vets will receive compensation. Administrators at the University of California, Berkeley are working to keep tuition costs down to benefit low-income students. New America Media reports that the number of first-year applicants from underrepresented groups attending the university has increased. Berkeley administrators hope to strengthen financial aid for students as the economic stimulus package increases government Pell Grants. And finally, an increasing number of Chinese students in the U.S. are looking to work in China once they've graduated. Singtao Daily reports that the Chinese government has offered substantial opportunities to those who return. Those are just a few headlines from the ethnic media. Back to Abby and Gary in the studio.
R&B singer Chris Brown could go to jail if convicted for the charges against him for attacking his girlfriend, singer Rihanna. The much publicized case has sparked discussion and in some cases ugly debate about domestic violence, especially in the Black community. Joining us today to talk about the issue is activist and writer Kevin Powell. Also with us, journalist Elizabeth Méndez-Berry. Thanks for being with us, guys.
Thank you for having us.
Elizabeth, you wrote a recent article, and in the article you mentioned that some of the Black women you spoke to about the situation blamed Rihanna for the situation. Can you talk about those responses?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, you know, I've seen this in many different communities. Certainly when I wrote a piece about domestic violence in the hip-hop industry, one of the people who spoke out, her name is Liza Rios. She was Big Pun's widow, and she wound up going public about what had happened to her. And the community—
Big Pun the rapper.
Big Pun the rapper, yes. And the community that was harshest in its criticism to her was the Puerto Rican community itself, because I think it was so unwilling to accept that someone who had been a hero was at the same time a much more complicated figure than it appeared. So I think, you know, you see that in a number of different communities, and it manifests particularly strongly in communities of color, Latino and African American communities, and others as well, because I think there's a fear of breaking ranks, or there's a fear of the idea that you would be seen as a traitor if you started to talk about internal dynamics versus the oppression that comes from outside.
So did you get a lot of flack for writing that?
Yes, I did. I think I was seen as a traitor. A lot of Latinos personally attacked me for making the decision to talk about it. And one of the things that they, I think, missed was that when Liza spoke out, and when a lot of these women speak out, I mean, Rihanna hasn't even spoken out. It's just a question of the material that's available to us. What she was trying to do, what Liza was trying to do, was break a cycle of violence that was manifesting itself within her own family, where her little son was beating up her daughters. And she said, you know what, I'm gonna talk about this in hopes that, you know, at some point we can start being more honest about the way that violence affects us, especially because Big Pun himself had been abused as a child.
Okay. Kevin, you wrote about your own personal abuse of women. I mean, I think that takes a lot of courage. Well, two questions. Have you overcome that, and why did you feel that you had to abuse women?
Well, a couple of things. One, we're talking about a period from 1987 to 1991. It's now 2009, so it's about 18 years later. 20 years of counseling, tremendous support network from men and women in my life. And one of the things that was said to me very early on is that you have to take ownership for this, and you have to get help, And then the third piece was at some point you have to begin to become an ally to women and girls, because I've been an activist since I was 18 years old for the last 25 years. So it's not like I wasn't in the community doing work. And the point I'm getting to is that it's not just blacks and Latinos, it's white brothers and sisters, Asians, it's across the board. This is not something that's significant, only our communities. This is a global phenomenon. If you go to the United Nations, you go to Amnesty International, you see this happening. But in our communities, as Elizabeth said very eloquently, there's a wall of silence. And so the first time I talked about it was in 1992. I wrote a piece called The Sexist in Me, and it was in Essence magazine, which is read by about 10 million black women, which is a huge thing to do.
And me too.
But my hero is Malcolm X, and the thing that I always admire about Malcolm, even with his own contradictions around women at certain points in his life, was that he was brutally honest about everything. And I think if you're going to put yourself out there as a public figure in any form or fashion, you have to be honest and you got to be accountable. Then on top of that, one of the things I said to myself was that, I wish that a young man had said this to me when I was growing up, because I come from an environment of abuse, of violence, etc., as Big Pun did, as many people in our community do. And I wish that these kind of testimonies had been available. I could have avoided some of the mistakes that I made. And so that's part of the reason why I've done it. And it's been several pieces. It was The Sexist in Me. I wrote a piece called The Confessions of a Recovering Misogynist in Ms. Magazine in 2000. There's a piece on Huffington Post right now called Ending Violence Against Women and Girls. And I got a piece coming out in a couple of weeks called Men Can Stop Violence, which is domestic violence, which is in response to this whole Chris Brown-Rihanna situation.
So this is an issue that's really close to your heart.
This has become one of the top 3 or 4 issues that I work around in my life, which is not just dealing with issues of violence, but redefining manhood, the broader piece, which is we got to redefine it away from patriarchy, sexism, misogyny, homophobia, violence across the board, because it's destructive.
Therapy, though. How describe the sort of therapy that you went through?
Just counseling. Many people in our community, especially communities of color, have an unwillingness to get help. I know very few black and Latino people, because the groups that I grew up with as a child, those are the communities I'm closest to. Very few of us talk about the childhood traumas that we deal with, the kind of things we see in our family environment. It is not just physical violence, it's emotional violence, it's verbal violence, it's spiritual violence. I can't even tell you, as a community organizer, how many people I meet who say, I was abused as a child, I was raped, I'm the product of incest, I've seen all kinds of violence happen to me. And so for me, I'm very honest about counseling, because it's really a way to encourage people to go out and get help themselves. We've got to heal our communities. That's what it's ultimately about.
Elizabeth, why do you think so many black American women tolerate domestic abuse? Because the numbers are pretty disproportionate.
Wow. Well, I think one of the factors in there that needs to be discussed is class. And is economic factors that manifest themselves, in the kind of stresses that you deal with in the home, the poverty, all of those factors. Native Americans actually have the highest rate of domestic violence by far. And there's a strong correlation between that and the economic crisis that those communities are facing. So I think that's part of it. Mm-hmm. I think that there's also some of the issues that we talked about. That Kevin mentioned. I think that there's a real, and I know within the Latino community I've seen it, there is a real discomfort with stepping outside and saying, you know what, this is happening to me. You have to be strong. You have to be strong, and you have to just take it, and you can get through it. And there's kind of a media portrayal, for example, of a white woman who faces domestic violence. It can sometimes be seen as, a flower, a delicate creature who, how could she ever survive that? Whereas Latinas and African American women are somehow seen as being stronger, and therefore they can put up with more, and that puts them at a really, really serious disadvantage, I think.
If I can, 2 quick things. One, I think we got to broaden this conversation out, because it's not just African American women. Yeah. If we say just the global African community, Haiti, Jamaica, Brazil, Dominican Republic, Puerto Rico, blacks in Britain, South Africa have massive problems around the domestic violence issues. Exactly. Number two, we got to be careful about the class piece. Prince George's County in Maryland, which is one of the wealthiest black communities in America, has high levels of domestic violence. There's a film by Shahida Simmons called No, which is about the history of rape and sexual assault in black America. She purposely interviewed only middle-class, college-educated black women who were survivors of rape and incest. And so it's not just a class piece, it's a problem that we've got to deal with, that we've been kind of pushing down.
Yeah.
No, and
how do we bring it to the forefront? I mean, you've been out there writing about it, both of you.
Right.
So it took a celebrity for us to start talking about it.
Yeah.
I mean, what more can we do?
Well, I think one of the exciting things, and obviously there's a lot of sadness around what happened between Rihanna and Chris Brown, is that it is one of these opportunities for us to start thinking about how we feel about it, because people have very visceral reactions.
Yeah.
And for example, I was interviewed by Jay Smooth on his fantastic website, Ill Doctrine, and the response to me just simply saying that I don't believe that men should hit women if women hit them first, that there are other alternatives for holding people accountable, that, my argument is, listen, everybody has the right to self-defense, but beyond that, retaliation just is not helping us as communities, right? But saying that was so controversial, and I'm hearing these conversations. Well, I would smack. It doesn't matter how tall you are, how small you are, And then when you listen and you attune yourself to what's really going on behind that, I got into some conversations with people on blogs. Turns out that their mother was abused.
Right.
Yeah.
Turns out that their sister was abused.
Exactly.
And then you start getting it. The reason that sometimes people are invested in believing that abuse only happens when it's deserved is because if you start saying that it actually happens at random, you are really at risk.
Right.
And a lot of the systems you're invested in are no longer valid.
Right.
Kevin, in your latest book, The Black Male Handbook, what are you telling young men about domestic violence?
Well, the essay, Ending Violence Against Women and Girls, is in the book on purpose because, I said there's no way we can do a book that's giving black men and Latino men, because it's really for black and Latino men specifically, a blueprint that is rooted in patriarchy, misogyny, sexism, homophobia, and violence. We really got to be serious about redefining this thing. And so in my essay, I talk about different situations that have happened. The murder of Mary Baraka's daughter and her partner by the husband of the oldest wife, oldest daughter, who had been a survivor of domestic violence in the household, and other examples. And at the end of it is 7 steps toward ending violence, what men can do. 1, own your issues. 2, get help. 3, begin to listen to the voices of women and girls. 4, make a conscious decision to change. For me, over the last 20 years, it's understanding that, Kevin, you grew up in this incredible world of violence. You've got to adapt a lifestyle of nonviolence, peace, and love. We live in a world, as she was talking about systems, our cultural fabric is rooted in violence across the board. I don't care where you are on the planet, violence seems to be the solution for every problem. You've got to make a conscious decision to move against that. Then as a man, understanding that you have gender privilege because you're a male, are you willing to give up certain things as a male that means that you're going to become an ally to women and girls? It's difficult for us, to do that.
Well, what about that stigma against therapy? Like, how do people get over that?
You got to do it anyway. Everywhere I go, I say the same thing, and I say very honestly, that I go to therapy. When I first started saying it 15, 20 years ago, people were like, it was like a... Now, people are like, yep, I go to therapy too. There's an acceptance, and I think part of it has to do with the era, of confessional writing that we've seen over the last 10, 15 years. Honestly, popular cultures has something to do with it when you have a Dr. Phil and an Oprah, having these kind of programs to talk about healing. I mean, it does, and I think that it's critical that we understand the importance of counseling to get well, because otherwise we're going to have these conversations over and over again.
And I think what's also crucial is just to recognize that for anybody in that situation, be it the abuser or be it the abused, it's not good. It's not healthy.
No.
It's a cycle that really needs to be broken. And I was so struck. I spoke about this issue with a lot of young people after I wrote a piece for Vibe about domestic violence in the hip hop industry. A lot of people got upset because we're talking about specifically very famous people who people love, who actually maybe aren't perfect, right? But it did generate a broader conversation, and it was clear. I heard one young man in the midst of a whole conversation about how women should be, you got to keep a bitch in line. Excuse my language.
Wow.
That was the discourse, and then a young man stood up and he said, my aunt was killed by her boyfriend recently.
Wow.
We'll have to leave it at that. Kevin Powell,
Thank
Elizabeth Méndez-Berry, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
We'll be right back.
You promised me the world. Is this what you had in mind?
Help EarthShare and its members restore balance to the world. Visit earthshare.org and see what you can do. EarthShare, one environment, one simple way to care for it.
For years, New York was without a radio station with programming aimed at the city's Caribbean communities. But not anymore. Some Brooklyn-based entrepreneurs have launched a station that brings listeners news, talk, and Caribbean culture every day, 24 hours a day. Garry recently visited One Caribbean Radio.
Let's say good morning on 740, giving you that flavor around the world. It's a global mix.
That's Bob Fredericks, aka the Spice Man. Fredericks is a veteran radio personality tapped by One Caribbean Radio in its attempt to revitalize programming for one of the largest groups in New York.
One love, we got you. Spice Man loves you. Peace out.
A year ago, and the reason we started it because it was meant to be representative of the Caribbean community, which numbers close to 3 million in the tri-state area, and we absolutely have no voice.
The station is hoping to fill the void left by WLIB when it stopped its Caribbean-themed broadcasting 4 years ago.
We don't have any kind of morning program or morning show that cares to like a Caribbean feel or anybody from the Caribbean, bringing news, sports, music, even dialogue.
We've actually now become the station where all the politicians actually gravitate to. We've had all the, Councilmember David Yaski, we've got, Councilmember Bill de Blasio, Congresswoman Yvette Clarke, we've got Councilmember Kendall Stewart.
While there is a strong argument to be made for a radio station catering to the Caribbean community, there appears to be little appetite for it from advertisers who are facing tough economic times, something that Edmon Braithwaite readily acknowledged.
It's been a tough road. It's been a very satisfying road, but it's been a tough road. The usual ups and downs as to when you start a business.
To date, One Caribbean Radio has spent more than $1 million and is showing a deficit. But investors are hoping to turn a profit in a couple of years. The station is banking on advertisers like money transfers, tourism, healthcare, and spirits as a way to keep it profitable.
We were able to get Western Union, MoneyGram, we've gotten Moet Hennessy with Belvedere, we've gotten Ron Abuelo Rum, which is a Panamanian rum company.
The ultimate goal is to serve that market, to fulfill the Caribbean or the Caribbean community, the African American, to bring the diaspora together, so to speak. It's like, that's the kind of feel.
So darling, stand by me.
For independent sources, I'm Garry Pierre-Pierre.
That's our show. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you again next week.
In the meantime, be independent-minded.